On June 7th, 2021, Maggie and Paul Murdaugh were shot and killed on their family's property. Maggie was shot with a rifle, and Paul was killed by a shotgun blast to his face. It was a brutal crime scene. Alex Murdaugh, Maggie's husband and Paul's father, was the one who called 911 from the scene. At the time, Alex was a powerful attorney born into a family of privilege and influence in the low country of South Carolina. But within months, things would change drastically for Alex. The investigation uncovered some of Alex's dark secrets connected to a series of financial crime. He was accused of swindling clients and stealing from his law firm. Then, things got even worse for Alex as he was arrested and charged with murdering his wife and son. Today, his trial began with opening statements. First, from the prosecution.
You have a chance to deliberate. The evidence is going to be such that you're going to reach the inescapable conclusion that Alex murdered Maggie and Paul, that he was the storm, that the storm was coming for them, and the storm arrived on June 7th, 2021, just like the storms that are heading here right now.
Then it was time to hear from Alex's attorney.
He didn't do it. He didn't kill Butcher, his son and wife. And you need to put from your mind any suggestion that he did.
Tonight, we are live from the Low Country with all the big moments from court as we hear for the first time what the prosecution says happened and what Alex Murdaugh says happened the night someone shot and killed Maggie and Paul.
I'm Vinny Politan. Thank you so much for joining us here on Closing Arguments, day one of the Murdaugh family murders. This is a big case, a lot at stake. It's going to be hard fought. And the one thing I always do at the beginning of a case and then throughout a trial is look at the defendant. Because when you look at a defendant accused of murder, you know that he knows if he did it. All right, prosecutors may think they have all the evidence in the world. They weren't there. There's one person in the courtroom for sure who knows whether or not he did it. And in this case, it's Alex Murdaugh. And that is so significant. And it's true in every murder trial that we cover, that the defendant knows for sure whether or not he or she committed the murder, or in this case, the murderers. That's why I think it's so significant to look at that defendant. Look at Alex Murdaugh throughout this case, how he's acting, how he's reacting to things that will transpire over the next few weeks. It can be very telling. Very telling. One, if you are wrongfully accused, like you're accusing me of murdering my son and my wife, or if he knows he's a killer. He knows that he did it, and he's got to sit there and listen to the evidence. Now, this is not an easy case for the prosecution. It's not easy at all. And I was talking last night that it's a mountain to climb, and that mountain is all about motive. Motive, not an element of the crime. Prosecutors don't have to prove it. But I guarantee you in this case, you've got to, in some sense, give this jury a reason why he would do what he did. And that's where the defense was today, talking all about, you know, how horrible and how horrific this crime scene was, this butchering of his own family. And they're doing that for a purpose. They want the jury to think about motive. Can the prosecution deliver that to this jury? Today's a big, big day. Opening statements are huge, huge. Many attorneys believe opening statements more important than anything else in the trial, because this is the filter through which the jury is going to hear the evidence. This is the first impression they get of what your case is, whether you're the prosecution or defense. Obviously, they're supposed to base it on the evidence, not the statements, not the arguments of attorneys, but they have a huge influence in the way they frame the evidence and frame the issues and let this jury know what they're hearing and what it means and what to listen for and what you're going to see and what you're not going to see. Extremely significant. That first impression is such a lasting impression. It works for juries as well. But you can always recover. You can always recover. Now let's get back to my first point, which was he knows if he did it, right? He knows for sure whether or not he shot and killed his wife and son. His attorney may not even know. Clients can lie to attorneys, or some attorneys don't even ask their clients if they did it, because that's not the way our system is set up. Prosecutors like me, we have to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. Defense doesn't have to do anything. But Alex Murdaugh was in that courtroom today when his attorney was describing the horrific murders of Maggie and Paul, his wife and son. And there was an absolute reaction from Alex Murdaugh. So when you look at him, once again, remember in your mind, he knows if he did it.
Paul Murdaugh was shot twice with buckshot, 12-gauge buckshot, once in the chest. And by the way, that shot would indicate it was in the chest and came out under his arm, like somebody that might have been holding up their hands. So when he says no defensive wounds, he perhaps was being held at shotgun. I mean, I can make the same sort of speculation that the Attorney General can, because that's all he's doing is speculating. What we do know is 12-gauge, fairly close range shot to the chest. He must have been turned because it comes out under his arm. There's wadding, if you're familiar with a shotgun, under his arm. The second shot ended up, and there's going to be some question about the direction of that shot, but ended up entering his skull cavity, and the gases from that shot literally exploded his head like a watermelon hit with a sledgehammer. All that was left was the front of his face. Everything else was gone. His brain exploded out of his head, hit the ceiling in the shed, and dropped to his feet. Horrendous, horrible, butchering. So to find Alex Murdaugh guilty of murdering his son, you're going to have to accept that within an hour of having a extraordinarily bonding, you can see it in the Snapchat, that he executes him in a brutal fashion. Not believable. Not believable. Now, Maggie is shot running. There's no defensive wounds because she's shot running, and after she falls to the ground and has one bullet that has hit her and probably traveled up and hit her brain, she's on the ground, and whoever the perpetrator was walked up, took that AR, and put one in the back of her head. Executed. Executed. Why? This is going to be interesting because we don't know why. He doesn't know why. He's got theories of this and theories of that, but why?
What's going on in his head? What is he thinking about? As his attorney describes the day his son and wife were murdered. Powerful stuff inside the courtroom. Let's bring in Court TV legal correspondent Chanley Painter, joining us tonight live from outside the courthouse in Walterboro, South Carolina. She was inside the courtroom today. Chanley, what was your takeaway from this defense opening today?
Three things. Based on the defense, Alex Murdaugh is innocent. There's no forensic evidence tying him to that crime scene or these murders. The state's facts are not facts. They're theories and conjecture. And that this was a brutal, brutal murder. As we just heard from Dick Harpootlian, he did not hold back. graphically describing the injuries to Paul and Maggie, and how could a loving father and husband ever commit such a crime. And we could see Alex Murdaugh there reacting to him as well. In fact, Dick Harpootlian began his opening statement by having his client stand up, a towering Alex Murdaugh. I would bet maybe 6'5", Vinny, stand up, the only one in that big courtroom, and all eyes were on him. Let's watch that moment.
It is our honor to represent Alex Murdaugh, or Murdaugh, depending on how you pronounce it. I say it's our honor because I submit to you what you have heard from the Attorney General as facts are not. They're his theories, his conjecture. Now stand up. This is Alex Murdaugh. And Alex was the loving father of Paul and the loving husband of Maggie. You're not going to hear a single witness say that their relationship, Maggie and Alex's relationship, were anything other than loving. You're going to hear about how they went to a baseball game the weekend before. You're going to hear about their relationship. You're going to see texts and emails indicating a loving relationship.
In those moments when Dick Harpootlian is calling his client a loving father and husband, the family of Alex Murdaugh, his sister especially, that I talked to you about yesterday, nodding her head in agreement with that argument. And the defense attorney goes on to talk about this Snapchat video taken about an hour before Paul's murder, where it shows his client as a loving father bonding with his son out on that Moselle property where the murders happened. And there was one other thing that really stood out to me, Vinny, and that is the defense trying to tell the jury, showing them that this is a property would take a while to travel from the house to the crime scene, and that there's no way Alex Murdaugh in just 10 minutes could have been able to murder his family, drive back to the house, clean up, dispose of all the bloody evidence, and get in his SUV and leave. And so that's interesting to me because then Dick Harpootlian said he's going to ask the judge to take the jury there to that property, Vinny.
That is fascinating, putting a real time restraint on all of it. We've been covering the Idaho murders. 4 people were murdered, 2 different floors, with a knife in about the same amount of time, maybe 12 minutes or so. You got in and out of town. So I don't know. We'll see what the jury does with that timeline. I have a question for you. What it was like inside the courtroom today, and the first part I wanted to ask you was, Alex Murdaugh reacting at times in that courtroom. Does the jury have a clear view of him?
They indeed do. They have a great view there up in the well of the courtroom. The jury box, it kind of is up a couple of steps, so they're a little bit higher than everyone else in the well, so they sit there and they can look over towards Alex Murdaugh. And I noticed a couple of them looking over towards him, but most of those jurors' eyes, and there are 8 women, 4 men, by the way, the 12 deliberating plus 6 alternates, had their eyes on the attorney presenting, because both sides really did captivate their attention as they moved around the well of the courtroom, delivering the opening statements. But Vinny, you can tell that this is one of the most highly anticipated trials probably in South Carolina history, because you could feel the eagerness of people as they filed into this courtroom today, sitting in anticipation of the opening statements, of the start of this trial, including the family of Alex Murdaugh. 9 members filed in right before the judge called the jury into the courtroom, including Alex Murdaugh's sister, as I told you, Lynn, his son, Buster, you can see sitting there. He was referred to by the defense in opening, and then Alex's 2 brothers sitting there as well. And he would turn and greet his family. He gave them a couple thumbs ups, and they smiled back as encouragement. And when Alex was becoming emotional, as you said, the family also echoed that emotion. I noticed a couple of them wiping tears away, especially in those moments where the defense was so graphic in the injuries to Paul and Maggie.
Yeah, looking at Buster looks just like his dad. unbelievable resemblance. And obviously father-son, but I mean, like, looks just like him. All right, Chanley Painter's going to stay with us. I want to bring in some guests. Joining us tonight in Port Royal, South Carolina, criminal defense attorney, longtime acquaintance of Alex Murdaugh, Jared Newman is with us. In Somerville, South Carolina, criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor Susan Williams. And Charlotte, North Carolina, the creator of the Murdaugh podcast, Impact and Influence, Matt Harris. And in Orlando, Florida, I needed her off the top here, jury consultant, human behavior expert, Susan Constantine. Susan, I want to start with you just to get your reaction to Alex Murdaugh in the courtroom. I put that whole thing up at the top of the show here. He knows if he did it. What did you see from the way he was reacting to those very graphic descriptions of the brutal murders of his son and his wife?
Yes, and you know, he does know what happened. So what I'm looking at is, as he's listening to this information being delivered to the jury, I'm watching exactly at those moments what his reactions are at that time. So the one that I found to be the most compelling was when he was hearing about his wife, or about his son's membranes being splattered everywhere. You could see what we call a mega cluster. Okay, in fact, I counted about 10 of them. And it was between the chin dimpling and the tongue poke, which usually is when there's a lot of emotional distress around the face, shaking his head back and forth. This was really more of a rocking, self-soothing gesture. With that, you could see that his eyebrows were more pinched. And it's not at this picture right here where we see it's further on. His head is down. At moments you saw his face flushing. Right here, what we're looking at, you see him touching his nose, thinking that there's actually something that's dripping there, but he doesn't really show any sense of tears at this moment. Other moments, he showed that mega cluster of distress, and at moments where he kind of pulls it, the more he was hearing, the more he became withdrawn, okay? So I believe at that moment, when it came to his son, there was a physiological reaction from a recall of what he saw. So whether he committed the murder or not, he did have true, genuine sadness and emotion as he heard it, or a sense of regret. And you could see his body language folding in, folding in, folding in. And that a lot of times we see that with shame.
Great insight. That's why we bring her on. Susan Constantine, thank you so much. Rest of our guests are staying with us. We've got to take a quick break right now, but when we come back, we'll hear from Jared Newman, Susan Williams, Matt Harris, as we continue our coverage here of day one of the Murdaugh family murders, plus coming up next hour.
On the docket tonight in Chula Vista, California, mother of three, Maya Miliete, disappeared more than 2 years ago, and now her husband, Larry, has been charged with her murder. Shocking new evidence revealed in court during the preliminary hearing. Evidence that Larry was spending thousands to cast love spells on his wife and black magic death spells on the man she was having an affair with.
In regard to May, there's quite a few themes there. It ranges from different kinds of control, having her be subservient, being a sex slave, to her obeying him. There's requests for her to be injured.
The life of Alex Murdaugh is bizarre. It is complicated.
This great South Carolina attorney is charged with the murders of his own wife and son.
Okay, and are they breathing?
No, ma'am.
Who exactly is this guy?
Everybody knows the Murdaughs. It's a household name.
A family that is so powerful. Who knows where this thing is going to end?
This case needs to be resolved. We need to put this behind us and move on.
Murdaugh Family Murders. Live coverage weekday mornings only on Court TV.
Buildings.
And the evidence is going to show that the defendant, Alex Murdaugh over there, told anyone who would listen that he was never at those kennels. But the evidence is also going to show from these things that every one of us, most of us carry around in our pockets, that he was there. And he was there just minutes before, with Maggie and Paul, just minutes before their cell phones go silent forever.
Powerful opening from the prosecutor as well, down in South Carolina. Unbelievable. Creighton Waters. Let's listen to more of it here as he lays out a timeline. And it seems like a big part of the prosecution case against Alex Murdaugh is the timing of everything and what they've been able to put together with his digital footprint.
About 8:30, not but 15 minutes after they arrived, Paul's phone starts moving towards the kennels. You're going to hear evidence again that the defendant said he was never at those kennels, that he was napping after they ate, and he was at the main house and never went there. You're also going to hear evidence about how much Alec used his own cell phone, and it would be unusual for him to be anywhere without his cell phone. At 8:44 and 55 seconds, Paul recorded a video. He was down at the kennels because he had been talking to a friend of his. And you're going to hear from this friend because his friend's dog was in the kennels and they thought there was something wrong with the tail. And Paul was recording a video of it to send to his friend. 8:44 and 55 seconds. And on that video, and you'll see that video, and you'll hear from witnesses that identify Paul's voice, Maggie's voice, and Alex's voice. Told anyone who would listen he was never there. At 8:44 and 55 seconds, there's a video. The evidence will show that he was there. He was at the murder scene with the two victims. And more than that, just over 3 minutes later, 8:49 and 1 second, Paul's phone locks forever.
Let's check back in with Chanley Painter at the courthouse. Chanley, what was your takeaway from the prosecution's opening statement today? They were talking about the storm, and it sounds like it's there right now.
That's right. What an analogy that was, because as openings were happening, we could start hearing the rain coming down inside that courtroom. It's still coming down, as you can hear outside the courthouse. But that was the prosecution's theory. Prosecutor Creighton Waters spent around 30 minutes outlining the prosecution's theory of the case, that Alex Murdaugh had this perfect storm brewing in his life that led him to murder his wife and son. He walked the jury through this minute-by-minute timeline of the movements of all the family members that night, highlighting, of course, Murdaugh's statements to police, the ballistic evidence, and then his phone, placing him there at the time Maggie and Paul were killed. And within 3 minutes of Paul's last cell phone video, it was chilling to hear, but we did learn something new in this opening statement. Let's watch.
And about a week after the murders, he shows up early in the morning at his parents' home, where his mother still is in late-stage Alzheimer's, on Alameda in Hampton. It's uncharacteristic for him to show up early, uncharacteristic for him to show up at all like that. And he comes in, and he's carrying something in a blue tarp, and he takes it upstairs. And eventually law enforcement finds out about that. And they go upstairs, and they find a wadded up, very, very large raincoat in a blue color. Could look like a tarp. And you're going to hear evidence that it was coated with gunshot residue on the inside.
A week later, was Alex Murdaugh trying to hide evidence? A lot of gunshot residue, some found on him at the scene, on a seatbelt of his car as well. Vinny, this testimony will start to unfold tomorrow with the prosecution's case in chief. We're likely going to hear from those first responders the night of the murders.
What a big day. What a big day. Let's go back to our guests who have been waiting patiently. Here we go. Jared Newman, Susan Williams, Matt Harris. All right, Jared, I'm going to start with you. The battle of the timeline. Whose timeline is better? Like, you have one side saying the timeline makes him a killer. The other one says the timeline makes it impossible.
Yeah, that's that's interesting. I like the way Dick Harpootlian did it. Dick took the invitation from the prosecutor when he said we have theories. Dick said we have facts. You can spin a timeline one way or the other. What happened? Why is there no blood on this guy? I've been next to people I've arrested in murders, and they're drenched in blood and brain and bone. I'd like to see the videos from the officers' body cams.
That could be very revealing. Susan Williams, the other big thing today, motive. We know that prosecutors were handcuffed a little bit about how far they can go, so they talked about a vague, perfect storm. And then Dick Harpootlian basically saying, this is a great father. He loved his kids. He loved his wife.
The perfect storm analogy, I just don't know how they could have planned it any better. If you'll remember back at Buster's and Maggie's funeral, at Paul and Maggie's funeral, there was a thunderstorm, and it's just serendipitous that it happened again today on opening statements. What an amazing day here in South Carolina. We'll finally get to see the truth come out, whatever that may be.
Matt Harris, let me ask you, you've been covering this story in depth in your podcast, Impact of Influence. Did you learn anything new today from either opening statement from the prosecution or the defense as they laid out the outline of what they believe their cases are going to look like?
There was a few things. The timeline when Maggie's phone went dead and when Paul's phone went dead, that exact time hadn't been mentioned. And we were not sure yet who was killed first. And they're saying it was Paul shot first and then Maggie's phone went off after that, which is an interesting detail. I also found it interesting that on the one hand, Dick Harpootlian is talking about this rush to judgment and how the Colleton County Sheriff's the next day said, everything's safe, don't worry about it, nothing to see here. And also, in that same breath, though, I don't believe, from everything I've heard, that the Murdaugh residence was searched to find if there was bloody shoes or bloody clothes there. No one on either side mentioned that the house was searched. Dick Harpootlian said there was a warrant, but he didn't say they went in. And I know for a fact that the family was in there the night of the murder. They congregated in that house. So how much was done to find where, if he did something with bloody clothes, where we have taken them? And the raincoat that was found, it appears to be in the open in the parents' house. He could have, the argument from the defense would be, well, if he really wanted to get rid of it, there's a lot of places in that area where he could get rid of it. Just laying it out in the open in his mother's house doesn't seem like hiding.
All right, our guests are staying with us. When we come back, we're going to hear more from those opening statements. And one big question that is looming, was there one killer or two killers?
Download the Experian app.
Big question. One shooter or two? Two guns, shotgun and an AR. And by the way, Maggie has no defensive wounds because she's running. What's she running from? And could you shoot? Typically she had a little shed right, probably 150 feet from the feed room on the other side of a wall. Perhaps she heard the shotgun blast and came around and saw somebody or two people, and whoever it was opened up. Was there enough time to kill Paul and then find the AR and then ambush Maggie? Much more likely there were two people.
Great point being made by the defense. You know, two different guns were used in these murders. Let's bring back in our guest, Jared Newman, criminal defense attorney, also former investigator. We got Susan Williams, criminal defense attorney, Matt Harris, host of the Murdaugh podcast, Impact of Influence. Jared, what does your gut tell you? You know, from investigating cases and now being an attorney, doing a lot of criminal work, you know, you've got two bodies, two different guns. How could this have gone down?
From day one, that's the problem that I've had. What do you tell somebody? Hang on, I got to go get another gun. I'm going to shoot you. Stay right there. And from where I saw the shots, the shooters, if there were two, and I think there were in different positions based on the shell casings. It just does not make any sense that you've got a fully functioning weapon. You're going to drop it and change weapons. That makes no sense at all unless they're two shooters.
Susan, what's the image that was created in your mind today after these opening statements and these descriptions of, Paul being shot first and then Maggie running and getting shot with a different gun?
There's always the possibility that the person or persons who did this used two different weapons to throw investigators off. I can see that side of it as well. The way that this is unfolding, I can't wait to see what the evidence is. I don't know exactly what to think at this point about that, but I do know that people will do things sometimes to throw off investigators.
So, Matt, what's the image in your mind of what this scene was like at the time of the shooting? Paul, again, shot first. Maggie running. She's shot second with a second weapon.
Well, it kind of threw me off because in my mind, I was going with Maggie being shot first. And why I say that is because if the killer, say it's Alex Murdaugh, had the blackout rifle or the AR as similar gun, does that, and then goes to the feed area where Paul is, it's quite likely and possible that there's a shotgun just sitting there. It's not unusual to walk the grounds in an area like that and take a shotgun with you when you're going out to see the dogs, perhaps, because you don't know what kind of creature might be coming up on you. They get wild boar and other animals out there. And that's one of the reasons that the AR as well, because they need that to handle heavy animals like boar and whatnot. So now that's the other way around. I think if you're the state, though, you can say, hey, there were guns everywhere around there. Not too hard to find one and pick one up and use a separate gun. Again, that's the timing of boom, boom, go get another gun is questionable. But I think that's what the prosecution would say. Hey, this is a hunting area. There was guns all over the place.
Now, another interesting scenario that both sides have to deal with is the phone, Maggie's phone, which is found away from the scene of the murders. Here's what Dick Harpootlian, what Dick Harpootlian had to say about that, because he's saying the only one who could have pulled this off was Houdini.
What you're also going to see is that Alex Murdaugh was calling that phone at 9:06. As he leaves the house, he did call her twice and texted her. And we also know that at 9:06, as he cranks his car, as the cell phone records show that, as the telemetry data shows the cell phone linking up with the car, that phone is being thrown on the side of the road almost a half a mile away. Now that is Houdini. That is magic. That is inexplicable.
Susan Williams, is it inexplicable?
No, it's not inexplicable, because if either he's Houdini or he's trying to establish a very good alibi.
Jared, does this strike you, this case, that it's a well-planned out double murder by whoever did it?
I don't know. It's hard to say. Obviously, there's a lot of mistakes made. Alec was a civil attorney. He may have been a prosecutor and all that, but he was not a criminal attorney, and he didn't know criminalistics and things like that. Maybe in a panic, I do agree with Susan that, you call her phone and make it look like you've been trying to reach her. So I don't know. I'm still out on that one, whether that's an alibi or how fast can you think? Once you kill somebody, if you kill somebody, the clock is spinning around really fast.
So, Matt Harris, what do you make of the the placement of the phone call and how it fits in, not the phone call, but the cell phone, and how it fits into the timeline of what was happening that night and where Alex Murdaugh was?
Well, there's a couple of things. First, I am curious when they start actually getting to the science of the logistics of the exactly where the cell phones were, because it's a very rural area. I've been out there, and one person right outside of Moselle, I had one bar. The person I was with, she had no bars. So I am curious how the triangulation and all that is going to be when the science happens. But there's a 12-minute window, and if that 12-minute window is to be believed, that is very hard to shoot them, get that phone a quarter mile away or whatever it was, and get in your car and take off for your mother's house. It's a tight window.
Not going to be an easy case for prosecutors. I mean, that's my big takeaway from everyone tonight, that it's never easy, right? It's never easy, and we shall see. By the way, we'll be down there with this show beginning next week, so I hope to see all three of you down in the Low Country.